Hi everybody, this is Maya Good. This is my final NaNoWriMo update. I know NaNoWriMo is not over. Today is the 28th, so everybody has what? 2 more days left to win. So, how did my Nano go? My Nano, if you've been following the previous videos, went very oddly. I made some serious decisions. I learned a lot about myself. And I made a very drastic change at the end of middle to end of week 2, where I decided that I was no longer going to write new words and I was going to focus on editing. This was huge because this was a project that I've been supposed to be editing for the last year and haven't been because on some level I felt like I wasn't ready. I didn't have enough skills. I wasn't good enough. Maybe it wasn't worth editing. Maybe my writing wasn't worth editing. And so really I spent the last year working very heavily on editing and submitting short stories. So to all of a sudden make this decision to focus on editing my novel was just huge. And it immediately felt like my shoulders were released and like I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. It felt really good. But that said, because I made that decision so late and because of the way editing hours are counted, it would have literally taken me 3 hours worth of work every single day without missing any days to stay on target. And I did okay for the first few days, but I realized that editing takes a lot more mental strength. It wears me out in a way that writing does not. So if I write for an hour, I'm chipper, I'm excited, I take a 5-minute break, I come back to writing, I feel fine. When I revise for an hour, I'm exhausted. I'm literally exhausted. And 2 hours, flatline. And so I was struggling to try to keep up with the hours, and it just wasn't working. And I also realized that there were things I needed to do as I was revising. I needed to do research on revising. I'm using the Holly Lyle revision course. There are modules that I have to read before I revise. And those hours were not counted. And so eventually I just took a deep breath and I said, you know what? I just need to do what feels right. So I began doing some things that I've been wanting to do but just haven't been doing. I began working my way through the modules properly rather than just skimming the reading material and then trying to jump into the worksheets. I allowed myself to slow down with reading my novel and to really think about each scene, each paragraph. And I discovered that I genuinely love this novel in a way that I've always liked it. I've always loved the story. But when I read it, I get tense in all the right spots. I get excited in the right spots. I want to know what's going to happen. Even though I know what's going to happen because I wrote it, I definitely feel like there's something very special about this book. And that is an amazing feeling. It is an absolutely amazing feeling. And so I've really just been wanting to give this novel its due. And I refuse to rush it. So, long story short, I've been reading through and marking up my manuscript. I have been reading the worksheets that go with the Holly Lyle revision class. I've also been I picked up Story Grid. I'm starting to work my way through that because that's really a book on editing. You don't want to read that when you're writing. It's so much about editing and getting into the nuts and bolts and the nitty-gritty. I've been doing a lot of thinking about things I need to add, things that I skipped over, things that I can deepen and make more rich in the novel. I have been working on my space. I realized that I can't work in... I've been on this journey towards minimalism, but I totally put it aside because NaNoWriMo just... I needed to focus, and I work freelance. I need to focus on that. My job had just exploded this month. And just with all the chaos with work, trying to keep things together, changing websites, not doing so great with new words on NaNoWriMo, I realized that my space was really affecting me emotionally. So I went through and did several purges this weekend. My daughter showed up surprisingly. I was not expecting her to show up because we don't celebrate Thanksgiving, and so I just assumed she would stay at school. She said she was going to stay at school, but she just miraculously showed up as a surprise. That also put a wedge in things because I no longer had 4 to 5 days. Like literally, if I was to complete, I would have had to do like 4 days of editing every day for like the past week. And I was on target to do it, and then she showed up. So that wasn't going to happen. But what I was able to do was start to get rid of things, a lot of things. Got rid of a desk, got rid of almost all of our DVDs. I kept 9. I kept 9. Each of the kids kept about 6, and they're taking them with them. I no longer have them down here. I'm getting ready to go through books next. I'm going to go through all of my books and only keep reference materials that I actually reference, a couple super special items that I'm willing to store, and books that I plan on reading between now and when I leave the country. And so that's going to narrow things down a lot. The goal is to have a really minimalist space so that I can visually and emotionally and creatively express myself more without so much clutter in my environment. And that's really helping. Oh my goodness. The minute I started throwing stuff away and this room opened up, I found that I was able to focus so much better, both on my novel and with work. So that's where I'm at. I'm not going to finish NaNoWriMo. I'm looking at it. I'm like, there's no way that I'm going to be able to edit, 8 hours a day for 2 days. I might be able to. I might give it a try. But truthfully, I don't think I'm going to be able to. So I'm okay with that. What I'm not okay with is giving up or just stopping. And for that, I'm really proud of myself. Because in the past, when I felt overwhelmed by National Novel Writing Month, I've just stopped. And this year, I learned so much about myself. I didn't just stop. I just changed my goals. I changed to editing. And when I realized that editing for hours and hours and hours every day for weeks on end was literally going to just make my brain bleed because I was so exhausted afterwards, it was going to affect my job. I adjusted my goal, and my goal was to just make progress. Every day make progress. Whether it is marking up a manuscript, whether it is reading something that is going to help me with the manuscript, whether it's taking notes on new ideas, whether it is meditating and mulling over ideas, whether it is considering additional plots that I can add to make it richer, whatever it is, as long as every day I make progress, I know that I've done the best that I can do this month. And I also know that I've learned something this month. And that really has always been my goal with National Novel Writing Month. I do it every year so that I can learn more, so I can be a better writer. Whether that learning is whether that learning takes the form of trying something new, or whether that learning is instilling a new habit, whether that learning is changing my writing technique, whatever it is, as long as I learn something new. And this year, I feel like I crossed a threshold, and I feel like I'm different as a writer than before. And I'm still trying to figure out what that difference is, but I am different as a writer than before. And I'm not ecstatic about it. I'm not sad about it. It's weird. It's like this feeling of just acceptance. Like, I'm a writer. Like, I don't have, I've said that before, but I've always felt like it's always felt like a really important statement, like something that I kind of I still had to get through a barrier to say it, even as I was saying it. And now I have no barrier. Someone, like, if I'm busy in the store, like doing a gazillion things, and someone says, "What do you do?" Out of my mouth, I'm going to say, "I'm a writer," without thinking about it. And that's new. It's also new the way I look at my manuscript, both Past and Imaging and Rising, because my first book was a mess. It was an absolute disaster. And when I looked at it, every time I looked at it, I felt like I was looking at a disaster. Now, when I look at those two books, I no longer see all the failings and all the problems. And I no longer, even that first manuscript, I no longer look at it and think that's unrepairable, that's horrible. I should just put that in the box and not look at it. Now when I look at them, it's almost like I'm looking at big giant lumps of clay. Like I look at them and I can see the things that are really awesome about them now, which I've been working towards that on the first manuscript. I mean, on the second manuscript, but on the first one, I could not do that. I could not pick up that manuscript and say, hey, there are so many things in here that are good about this manuscript, because all I saw was just a pile of mess. Now when I look at it, I can tell you very clearly that there are things in there that are really good, and that book's going to get revised too. That's new. My ability to be flexible with my writing has changed. I've always felt like I needed to have really strict external rules to keep me on target, to keep me writing. I was always afraid that if I didn't make these rules for myself, these arbitrary rules that are externally enforced, that something might happen and I might stop writing. I no longer have that fear at all. When I decided that I'm not going to write new words for NaNoWriMo, at no point was I afraid that I was going to stop writing. In previous years, I would have had that fear. In fact, I have a huge goal and project coming up for 2016. Something that is a huge stretch, something that I'm totally fearful of, something I know I'm going to accomplish. And even that, like, I'm doing it, but it's not about if I don't do it, I may stop writing. That project is about practicing and getting published. So I definitely feel like I've crossed a threshold in my identity as a writer. I feel like I've crossed a threshold in my comfort level of being a writer. If you're curious about my 2016 project, me and two other writers are taking on the challenge of writing a short story every week for 2016. We're also going to do a podcast around it where we're going to talk about what we learn and what it's like to do that. But it comes from the advice that Ray Bradbury gave to new and aspiring young writers. He said, you should write a short story every week because you can't write 52 bad short stories. And so we're going to take that to the test. And my goal in doing that is not to create a writing habit, because I have a writing habit. I don't need to create one because I'm a writer. There's no fear that I'm going to stop writing. And that's what's new. But the reason why I'm doing that is because I need publication credits before I start querying my novel. And to make this goal and have my reasons be so plain and so simple and just, this is what I need to do in order to make business work, is new. All of that's new. So this year is a big year for me. I will finish editing Past and start querying it. I will be writing short stories and sending them out. Once a few weeks have passed, what's going to happen? I have a schedule for myself, a weekly schedule for myself. I come up with the idea on Monday, I write fresh words, Tuesday, Thursday, I edit on the day before the podcast. I've mapped out my week so that I can literally get in the cyclical rhythm of writing a short story every week, revising it towards the end of the week, letting it sit for 2 weeks, and then revising it a second time and then sending it out. So that's interesting. And it's just, I have so much going on and so many changes. And even if I don't manage to sit my butt down for the next 2 days and edit for 10 hours a day? I don't even know how many hours a day I would need to do. I think it would be 10 hours a day. No, maybe 12. I don't even know. I think I'm at 38 or something. So I would just, if I could sit and do that, even if I could sit and do that, that would not be what made me win this NaNoWriMo. I can sit and do those things. I can just edit for an entire day, nonstop. And at the end, I could put on my shirt and feel fine. I can do it. It doesn't feel like an accomplishment. I may try to do it, but that doesn't feel like even a fraction of the accomplishment that I feel from the lessons that we've already talked about. I feel that having this new relationship with my writing, having this new flexibility, this new understanding of how it feels to revise is way more of a growth point for me than whether or not I can sit for 2 days and edit nonstop. So that's where I'm at. I'm really happy with this year's NaNoWriMo. It went completely in a direction I was unprepared for, completely unexpected, and I'm actually significantly happier for it. So that's where I'm at. I am about ready to go check on dinner, and then I'm going to be doing some more revision and then get some work done, because work doesn't stop just because it's NaNoWriMo.